for inviting me to come here today. It's a great pleasure to always talk about this particular project, which is the Allan Water Improvement Project. For those of you who don't know about the Forth Rivers Trust, I'll just give you a quick background. Although I think I've worked with quite a lot of you before, there's a little background noise going on there. So the Forth Rivers Trust is an environmental charity which basically looks after, or tries to look after with communities, the river systems that discharge into the Firth of Forth and the Forth estuary. And the Allan Water is one of those rivers. It's coloured in yellow on this screen. The trust was formed in 2008 and as I say, is a charity where it now has about 20 staff. In 2008 it only had 2 staff, so we've grown quite quickly over the years and sort of taken advantage of some of the sort of real drive now for natural solutions to some of our water and river issues. It's an organisation that works very much on evidence-based, and we have a science arm looking after the data collection for levels of sustainability for ecology, and we also have project delivery arm which actually delivers projects on the ground. We don't have any core funding from anybody as such, and most of our work is very much sort of project-based delivery. So today I'm really pleased to be able to talk about the Allan Water, and most of you will know the Allan Water, and you'll see I've just put improvement in inverted commas at the moment because it's a bit of a debate at the moment as to whether we should be talking about what improvement is as opposed to what the communities and people along our rivers think improvement is. So although it's technically called the Improvement Project, it's something that we're sort of alive to. So you'll see the Allan Water here, many of you will know it. It's a split catchment. The north half is in Perth and Kinross, and the second lower half in Stirling, with Bridge of Allan and Dunblane as the 2 major conurbation areas, and it discharges into the Forth just before Stirling. As a management, we tend to manage our rivers on a catchment scale where we can, and we've really been delighted to have this project in the trust now for a number of years, about the same time as I became director in 2015. It's unusual in that it was a project that was already had been formed before we took on the hosting of it, and has actually been going since sort of 2011, so about 10 years now. And I think, you know, in that context, we should bear in mind that that's how long it can take for some of these projects to start really delivering on the ground. So it was set up in response to a number of things, and one of those was flooding at Bridge of Allan. And it was set up first and foremost as a natural flood management project, and it receives funding from Scottish Government each year, really for the steering group, but via the trust and our staff, to talk to landowners and other stakeholders as to what we can do and where we can bring improvements to the river and the catchment more widely to deliver some kind of natural attenuation to the flooding issues downstream. So we're very pleased when we took over the project to find that there's a Bible, and this is the Bible here that was delivered by Cress, part of Stirling University, and Halcro in 2011. And in it, it scoped out huge areas of where we could possibly work with landowners to look at attenuating flood waters downstream. And as part of that, as we go through talking about the project, lots of other really useful bits of information have now come to light on sort of natural techniques that we can employ whilst we're working on these types of projects, including the NFM Network Scotland website just there. And there's a lot of really good publications, such as the one by Crew here, about how we can use new techniques to try and stop the peak flow from getting further down the catchment. So we are now sort of 10 years on looking at, and we will be reflecting back on the scoping study that was done 10 years ago later in another project, which I will mention. So we're going to talk today very much about the Upper Allan rather than sort of work that's been done further down in Dunblane and Bridge of Allan. And a lot of you will know the catchment quite well, but I just thought for those others who perhaps don't know the catchment, I'm going to refer to three particular sites which I have ringed red in here, just so everybody can kind of get a bit of geographic sense. So if you can see my cursor, this up here is the top of the Nake, and which is a tributary of the Allan, and right at the top of here is a farm called Tyne Blair, and I'll be talking about some of the work that we're doing there. This one on the right hand side of the stream is Blackford, which is the top of the sort of the main Allan water stem, and the bit in the middle is around Green Loaning, which is where the Nake and the Allan water split. So when we're talking about the Upper Allan, we've kind of split the Allan into three areas. This is the Upper Allan. We've got Mid Allan, which is this section down towards Dunblane, and the Lower Allan. And really quite a lot of our work is now concentrated very high up in the catchment, where we can find space to work, as well as sort of work on those sort of very much source of issue rather than where they're caused. So I'm hoping that on the next slide is a video, which I'm just going to run. I'm just going to talk through. It's quite difficult to sometimes explain what some of the problems are, and I'm hoping that this is going to run. Is anybody seeing that?
Not yet. We do see a pause button on the left.
Yes. I don't know whether there's just not enough band. It doesn't really matter. It's a film, a drone sequence of the river, which would just have provided a bit of context. But I can send the link round to everybody after the meeting, so you can have a look at it. But it kind of just gives you a bit of an idea. But if it's not going to run, then we'll move on. So the bit that I was showing you on the drone video there, or I hope to show you, is actually what we see today from Green Loaning all the way up to Blackford. And having seen the video, you will see that it's a fairly straight bit of river with the railway very much tucked on one side. And this is a picture here of what the river was like in 1850 when they decided to build the central Perth, Stirling to Perth railway. Mm-hmm. And the line of the railway is this black line running down the middle here. And obviously the wiggly line along here is what the river looked like before they put the railway in. Now, obviously, the railway was a very important bit of infrastructure running from Stirling to Perth, and it crosses the River Allan a number of times further down the catchment, and there's quite a lot of tunnels and viaducts crossing the river. But when they got to this bit, there was obviously a possibility they were going to have to put in quite a lot of bridges. And in this map, you can see there were areas where they were talking about they were going to straighten the river as they went along. Now, what they actually did in reality, rather than leave quite a lot of this sort of wiggly river in place, is they actually cut a very straight line all the way along, almost exactly on the edge of the line there, taking out all of the links and curves of the river all the way up and through, and just sort of tidied this bit up, as the Victorians rather had a tendency to do as you get up to Blackford. So we have a river up here at the moment, which is very straight, but obviously in the past wanted to be more dynamic and have more connection to the floodplain, and certainly a greater length. And when we're talking about natural flood management, one of the issues is that water travels much faster down a straighter, shorter thing than it will if it's given the chance to move much more slowly down through the valley. So in the sense of what we're trying to do in the Upper Allan project, we can't reverse what's been done in the past, and the railways is very significant and very close to the river, and we have to be mindful of what we do here, not to interfere with any of the railway. We also should say we're not really into river restoration as such. We know that this is what the river looked like in 1830 or 1850 when this went in, but we don't know what it would have looked like today had they not actually put the railway line in. So we can't really take a judgment call and say, should we restore it to this? or should we restore it to something that we think it is? So the decision that's been made on this section is to try and reconnect the river with the floodplain on the north bank. That way relieve some of the pressure on the railway line so that any erosion from the river is mitigated by northward travel of any kind of water pressures, and try and see a little bit what the river would do if it was allowed to reconnect itself naturally to the floodplain. What you didn't see because of the of not doing the video, but all the way along the north edge of here is quite a high embankment. And in discussion with Blackford Farms, who own all this land, they're not too keen about really just getting the machines in and removing the embankments, but they are quite keen to work with us about how we can manage the water better, particularly in respect of some of the flooding in Blackford, but also downstream. So we've been engaged with them undertaking a number of projects, which I'm just going to have a quick chat about just now. So we've highlighted 4 areas in the upper Allan area, which is this area here. This was a conifer plantation. It's actually no longer there. That has been felled. This is shelf forky moss, and all of this area around here are SACs, SPAs, triple SIs. It's one of the most important protected areas on the Allan. We've got an area up here which is rough grazing at the moment, and then we have an area here on the river where the river is trying to jump the bank and is trying to get out, but the landowner has quite a lot of agricultural land around here that they are trying to manage in the context of the river moving. So looking at this first section area here, you can see that there's some ponds forming already here. And earlier on this year, we were very pleased to get some funding from Nature Scott to look at looking at this site to make it better for waders. And in that, what we're going to do is, and this is Dave Hunt from RSPB, who's helping with this. We're going to take some of the scrub that's been left over from the felling of this forest. The Scottish Forestry and the landowner have agreed to restock that amount of forestry somewhere else, slightly better than on the floodplain. And we're going to use the timber that's left over to fill in quite a lot, putting leaky dams effectively across quite a lot of the ditches that have been cut across, which you can see going along the edge of here, to slow the movement of water from the upper areas across this floodplain and into the river. We're going to, we're going to create some wider wader scrapes to create some wetland, and we're also in agreement with the landowner going to start breaking the drain system before it hits the river. And all of this should keep the water on the floodplain much longer and slow the process of the water. It should also increase water quality and provide all sorts of nice additional habitats along the Strath Allan there. The second area is shelf forky moss, and we worked with Blackford Farms a year or so ago for an agri-environment fund management scheme here. And we're just about to let the contract for shelf forky moss peatland restoration, funded via Nature Scott in conjunction with them, and a really important bit of work, management work, to restore this peatland area again within the floodplain, holding the water back, hoping to get that carbon capture. And finally, at the top, we've got some work that we're part way through, which is river restoration and wetland creation. This section of the river here, we've installed already large pieces of woody debris to try and prevent erosion issues on the south side, but also to create much better habitat within the watercourse there, clean the gravels, move the gravels around, but also we actually have interesting quite a lot of lamprey in this area as well, and create some lamprey habitat as well. Also planting quite a lot of trees along the bank there, and some work that we're just about to start, hopefully in the next month or so, is to create 4 or 5 big ponds, scrapes across this area around here, and we're also going to be putting in a vegetated weir in the embankment, which will allow floodwater onto the floodplain earlier, get held in these ponds, and then move back into the river much slower. So again, water quality and just creating those wetlands and those habitats. All working with Blackford Farms, who've been a really fantastic partner to get this landscape scale change. So again, we're not looking at forcing nature to do something, we're just allowing, we're trying to encourage nature to sort of naturally go back to its natural processes. So you can see here some aerials. This is the agricultural land that we're just trying to protect a little bit. That's where the farmer gets his income from, so we need to help them with that. And this is the area where we have put in some of the large woody debris to protect that. As I say, you would have the drone imagery comes from the other end, but I will send the links around for those who are interested to see it. Second off, also working with Blackford Farms, we've just recently received some additional funding to do some more breakout of some embankments and put some leaky dams in. And we've just finished the survey. This is Blackford here, for those on context. It's the railway line, A9, so we call this area south of the A9 because we're not very imaginative about those things. And this is Highland Spring, this is Tullabarden Distillery. So what we're wanting to do here is slow the speed of water off the land into this section of the Allan water here and into these burns that are flowing down into Blackford. And this is part of sort of trying to do some natural flood management to protect Blackford itself, but also again, do that biodiversity. So each of these red dots, we're going to be installing something that looks a bit like this leaky dam here. We haven't quite finished it yet, the designs yet. And we're hoping then to monitor that and see whether or not that reduces the flow through Blackford. And we've got a little monitoring station at the bridge just down here. So these are what these ditches look like now. You can see they're quite straight. And of course, the water's running off very, very quickly into the river. In addition to that, at the moment, we're doing some other work with some other landowners. We've been talking about Blackford, which is up here, but down just below Green Loaning, we've got a couple of other landowners here where we're working. We've just earlier on this year put in an application for a waders project, which is a collaboration project. And again, this is creating habitat for waders, but it also does all sorts of other good things in respect of wider ecology, slowing the water off the land, cleaning our water and looking at that flood connection between the river and the surrounding areas. We do a bit of work with business as well. So we've been doing work with Highland Spring, and they obviously have protected water catchment, which they're very, very keen on. And we've just undertaken some surveys to do looking at the biodiversity of their catchment, to see whether there's some additional work that they could be doing just to help with some of the species around the areas, particularly where we might have had some poorer quality grazing or other damage caused by some other activities in the past. So that's the Upper Allan, that's the area between Green Loaning and Blackford, where we're mainly working with Blackford Farms. But on the other tributary, sort of going up towards Tyne Blair tributary, we've undertaken some other work with landowners there, which has mainly been peatland restoration. So this was the first bit of peatland restoration we did with peatland action work. It's now quite a few years old, and the drone imagery here is gives a very quick visual impression of what it was like before we started, what it was like a year later, and you can see how the land is sort of beginning to reclaim these areas. We now use this as a site where we take people to show them what they can do, how we can help them, and as part of our funding with Scottish Government, we're very keen to sort of have sites of case studies where people can go and see what the benefits of this kind of work is. So further up, right up at Tyne Blair, we have undertaken a number of peatland restoration works and peat dams with the tenant farmer there, some of which have been done under AICS and some of which have been done under peatland action. And I think what has been really fantastic with this project is that the farmer and his son have undertaken the works themselves. So they have gained a skill by doing this. They've been trained through this process. And particularly Daniel Carnegie, who's a young lad in his early 20s, he's now set up his own business with his digger, undertaking peatland restoration in a lot of other areas. So a fantastic something where, you know, the environment, the community and skills are all coming together. So at Tyne of Blair, we've done these two quite large areas, and as part of the overall Allan Water project, we produced 3 videos. Again, you can see we're not very imaginative in our titles, called the Peat Series Episode 1, 2 and 3. They are on YouTube, and again, more than happy to send the links around. I don't know whether the slides will go around and you'll be able to see them anyway. And that's all about the practicalities of doing peatland work, working with local farmers and getting things off the ground, and seeing how practically these things can be undertaken. We do a bit of a testing of a few things, and the Arivor Aspen project, again up in the Nake, was a little project that we did with volunteers. We were looking at regeneration of aspen along this particular river corridor. And what we did is we planted aspen in a number of different ways, some in enclosures, some just in tubes. We built an enclosure where we didn't put anything in at all to see what would happen. And we also built enclosures around existing aspen trees. We've just been back and had a check of this. This is now 3 years old. And we will be writing a bit of a paper on what we've learned from this as to the best methods of protecting tree growth, for effectively the issue here being deer browsing. And hopefully we can help other people that want to do similar projects to this. But you can see in these that, you know, working along rivers does have its own problems. We do get damage, quite a lot of damage with trees, and you can see sort of areas where as the water rises, some of these enclosures do take a bit of a battering. So in the pipeline, so that's a bit of work that we've been doing after a few years. I'm not quite sure we are on time, but I'm nearly wrapping up now, hopefully. We've got a few things in the pipeline. We did a peatland feasibility study for above Tyne of Blair, and as you can see, there's some quite big peat hags up here. This would be with Drummond Estate. And that's one of the conversations that we're having at the moment is how do we phase and get funding in to do this restoration. We've just got some funding from Network Rail and the Tree Council to do some riparian tree planting up the Dannyburn, which runs down into the back of Blackford. And we're looking at the moment, we would have started this project had we actually been able to get hold of some trees, which we found very difficult to get hold of just at the moment. We're working with farmers about peatland code. One of the questions we're always being asked is what's in it for the landowner? How do they get management money? How do they benefit from capturing capturing this carbon on their land? And we're working with Tyne of Blair and Blackford farms on that. That's very new to us. And also, we are not a partner, but we're working very, very closely with a new EU project called Merlin, which has got a very exciting title of Mainstreaming Ecological Restoration of Freshwater-Related Ecosystems in a Landscape Context, Innovation, Upscaling and Transformation. And the Allan Water, we hope, is going to be used as part of that to demonstrate how we can, if not remove embankments, remove the influence of embankments and the issues that they have in terms of river to floodplain connectivity. We do quite a lot of surveys and make sure that what we do, we can show some benefits. So invertebrate surveying, we use a new technique called eDNA, which is environmental DNA testing, and electrofishing, and our science team at the Trust capture quite a lot of this. Just quickly, in terms of the Revive the Allan project and the river restoration, we can see that salmon and trout particularly like the kind of work that we've done. We're not at all saying that there are more salmon and trout in the river as yet, because we've only just finished it and we need to go through obviously the cycle of salmon and trout. But clearly where we put the habitat into the river, the fish will go towards it. eDNA, for those that don't know it, is a new system where you can actually find out all sorts of different species just by taking a litre of water. And this is the vertebrate species for the Upper Allan, and you can see that quite a lot of species have had some contact with the water. I haven't got time to go into that today, but it's a very good way of looking at species absence and presence. And there's the guys doing electrofishing on the Allan, just there. So we work very closely on the project with the local councils on the flood alleviation schemes, of which there's quite a number at the moment. So Blackford flood assessment is going through at the moment, just had community engagement. We're working in some discussions about the flood scheme at Bridge of Allan, and we're looking at further NFM options with the council's consultants in the Upper Allan. But we've also, as part of this project, a number of other things sort of sprung off the back of it, and that's discussing whether or not there are possibilities for Stirling and Calendar flood alleviation schemes, and we're also in discussion on the River Devon with the Clackmannanshire flood team. INS, obviously just been mentioned. We do still try and coordinate INS catchment wide across the Allan. We don't receive any real funding for this anymore, but it's sort of part of the wider catchment. And we're also looking at barriers to fish passage across the catchment as a whole. Very pleased that Tullabarton are about to install a new fish pass solution on the Dannyburn. This is the Muckleburn picture here, where we're trying to get some funding to either take it out or bypass it. And we are in discussion with Transport Scotland over the problems with culverts on the A9. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I'd just like to say very much thanks to the steering group who help us on the Allan Water Improvement Project. It is co-funded by Scottish Government, who give us some money every year to pay for staff time. And we host the staff, and that's Sandra Stewart, our Land Management Officer, and Blythewater, our Project Support Officer. And they would be very happy, I'm sure, to talk about more detail about what they do. So thank you for listening.